Coming up this week on Meeting Minds, I have a fabulous guest who really has a lot of information to offer up on us, people, humanity, all of the things that go into planning an event that we all want to know, and her big company that we're all familiar with is doing a lot of research on. You're not going to want to miss this week's episode of Meeting Minds.
This is Meeting Minds with Charles Ide. Join Charles and his co-host Paige as they chat with leaders in today's events world on how you can take your events to the next level. Broadcasting from the IDECOM studios in Minneapolis, Minnesota, this is Meeting Minds with Charles Ide.
Thank you all for joining us in the IDECOM studios for another week of Meeting Minds. I am so excited to introduce this week's guest. I think one of the glorious things that technology has been able to provide and bring to all of us in the industry over the last year or so with the pandemic is the ability to connect virtually and digitally. And some of these guests that we've been able to get on the podcast are bigger and better than some of my wildest dreams from when we started doing these podcast a couple years ago. So I am just so excited to introduce Megan Henshall, the Global Events Account Manager at Google. Thank you for joining me today, Megan.
I'm so happy to be here. Welcome into my home.
Where is the home that I am welcomed into?
So right now I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, writing out the work from home time. But traditionally, I'm based in the Bay Area.
Okay, so home for like pre-Google, pre-adult lifestyle is in the South. Yeah. That's amazing. And then how was that shift and transition to good old Silicon Valley?
Oh man, where do I start? The traffic, first and foremost, the cost of living is wild times out there, but really good, incredible, smart people. So we really loved the experience. Happy to be in the South for the time being, though. We'll take it from now.
Yeah, exactly. I think I feel like people are flocking to the South. A, open compared to some other places, and B, just a different, slower pace of lifestyle.
Yeah, it's friendly down here, y'all.
I love that you added that in there. So for those of our listeners who haven't had a chance to get connected with you and want a little bit more knowledge on someone who has such a prestigious title in a company in the events industry, what's your background? How'd you get to doing some of these great work you're doing with Google?
Sure. So Cliff Notes, I was really terrible at sales. So I started my corporate career at a technology company in an enterprise sales division, cold calling and trying to sell technology, hardware. I was not great at that and I did not love it. So I figured out a way to meet needs that I saw and fill gaps around like logistical planning for regional sales meetings and content design and development. So that's how I got into events and realized really quickly that I loved the work and I was sort of made for it. So from there, I worked inside of enterprise sales orgs, sort of driving executive briefings and customer engagements, and then made my way into the financial industry, doing a lot of industry type events, again, customer support, internal facing events, a lot of incentive work, and then went to the agency side for a few years and partnered on a number of really big sort of tentpole milestone events across learning and development and incentive. And then I landed at Google. My role now is a little different from like logistical planning or individual experience design work or project-based work. Now as the global events account manager, I sit on the leadership team for a global organization that's shared service for all of Google. My team, we design and build our own event spaces, and those range from really bespoke learning and development space all the way up to world-class technical production event centers. So we design and operate those spaces with event management teams and technical production teams across our global footprint. And my role on that team is to drive strategy. So I partner really closely within and throughout all of our product areas at Google. I understand how events and experiences drive business, how they build communities, how they keep people engaged and connected. And from that understanding, I do strategic planning for the team to meet those needs both now and long term. So definitely a big job. Definitely skip level from where I was before I threw my name in the hat for this job. I'm still sort of pinching myself, wondering how I got here, but I love the work. And for the most part, Google is everything that you hear that it is. It's a great place to be.
That's amazing. So you just dumped a lot of like knowledge and buzzwords. Even for my brain, I'm like, okay, what does she actually like do then? If you were to say in a normal day or month or quarter, even if we're trying to like pinpoint like what you do and how you kind of help an event for those of us that aren't familiar, what might that look like?
Yeah. So I'm not really managing individual events or projects. I'm more how do I keep this as succinct as possible? I'm a problem finder and a problem solver. So I'm looking for broad needs across an organization of 130,000 Googlers plus our strategic vendor partners. And I'm trying to figure out ways that we can meet those needs at scale. And then I partner with our operations teams to actually execute against those needs.
Okay.
Is that more clear?
Yeah, I think so, because I think all of us in the events industry think you have an event at X date and then you do all the pieces and planning and vendors and partners to get to that specific date. But with an organization like Google or, Apple, some of those big, huge tech companies. Okay, so we had someone with Indeed, the global events director with Indeed the other week, and she had a lot of similar responsibilities, right? And she was on the operations side of things where it was definitely more strategy. And I left that conversation thinking, even trying to recall after our 30-minute podcast, what she actually does. So I was trying to get a little more granular with you. Like, okay, what do you actually do? And if someone were to even potentially want to be in a similar type role, what capabilities or responsibilities they would have?
Yeah. So honestly, a lot of what I do is connect dots between the product areas. So someone's looking for X digital event solution or to create X remote attendee engagement opportunity. So is this PA over here. I connect dots and we work toward a unified solution. So we're talking about my team does pre-COVID, and we've definitely seen a spike in volume, but pre-COVID, we did about 65,000 events a year.
Wait, you said 65,000 events a year?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay.
Yeah.
So many questions, but yes, keep going.
Yeah. So the scope is big and broad, and that's across like every possible use case you can imagine, right? From internal sort of like all hands and town halls for Googlers to, some tier 2, we even touch some tier 1 marketing events. So it really is the full spectrum of experience. So yeah, 65,000 events, and we're sort of designing unified solutions across all of those use cases. Again, big job. And we're certainly like looking to scale up to meet that demand. But yeah, it's ever evolving. But really it's just having a lot of conversations with people, understanding their pain points and connecting those dots to say like, here's what's needed and here's how we need to move and act in order to meet that need.
Okay. Very interesting. A lot of that has to do with you and your team studying and understanding how events are built within a community, our events are built around people. And now I'm starting to grasp that it's definitely, like you said, that problem finder and problem solver. But then the human element throws a whole nother kind of caveat into all of it. How do you account for that? What is that role in that piece of the puzzle there?
Yeah. So it's a great question. So I think I had my hands full pre-2020, and then the 2020 of things happened. And in a way it was like, oh my God, all that work, all of that strategic work and planning that was done, like we basically set that on fire and threw it in the garbage. And in another way, it created a really amazing opportunity to completely reimagine how we show up as a shared service organization for Google and our external communities. So it is a catch-22. But I think as we were looking at, okay, we know we're omni-channel now. We know we really need to remix what we have to work with and how we're applying it to the problems we're looking to solve based on the fact that we need to do digital well, hybrid thoughtfully and inclusively, and in person safely and sustainably. So we got very overwhelmed. There was some paralysis at first, but I think, Google is a culture of care. And we really wanted to start with human beings and our audience's appetites and priorities after the 2020 of things at the heart of what we were looking to do with design work. And so we launched this very broad, very big, a very ambitious research project, really trying to analyze behavioral trends, what we were hearing externally in the market, how people changing was influencing the market in and of itself, and trying to really get ahead of like what people would want from experiences after everything that we just survived in 2020. Well, and we're in Q5 of 2020, by the way, like we're still in this.
That's not done. Like, I feel like this is 2020 plus, like we're not really in 2021 yet. We're just still there.
Yeah. I'm thinking when the weather gets warmer, maybe, I don't know, I'm holding out hope. I keep setting like mini milestones for when that the good and the happy and the fun are going to kick in, and it keeps getting pushed, but we're on our way. Light at the end of the tunnel.
I get married this fall. And so I'm just thinking then, like after that, things will be like normal and better is when I've tried to frame it up in my mind.
100%. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I keep comparing 2020 to Jumanji, and like, we've made it through Jumanji, right? We just have to sort of like now let the dust settle and like figure out how to move forward. We're through business continuity and sort of like just survival mechanisms. And now we're into really dreaming up and creating the future that we want, which is super exciting. So we started with human-centered design. We started with research. We started with collecting as many data and insights as we could, really to sort of formulate theories that now throughout 2021, we're going to test and we're going to experiment with. We're partnering with our strategic vendor partners. We have a number of agencies that are embedded at Google, as well as some academic partners to run field experiments and really to really go into 2021 with data that helps us know what works and what resonates with our communities. So I'm pumped about that work this year, and I can't wait to see how it all lands and to share more once we get to that point.
Yeah, I was going to say any tiny little tidbits of nugget and information, as I think everyone in our industry is just looking for answers or clarity around what people want out of events and hybrid and things continuing to change.
Yeah, so I can definitely share some of the theories that we're testing, and I've sort of been referring it to as the C's. So it's community in this new world. Community is the commodity. I think we're going to see a ton of pent up demand to come together and be social and have community. I think elective, like fun, like music festivals and all of that stuff, we're going to see that blow up, right? Once it's safe enough to do so. But I think for business events, we also need to capitalize on that craving, right? The deprivation from 2020, wanting, driving people to want to be together. And we need to create really meaningful social and community driven opportunities for our audiences. So it's no longer content is king, it's community is king. Community is the thing that's going to get people out of their houses or onto planes and into our worlds, so that we can sort of create that behavior change that we're looking for. Also, co-creation, I think, will be huge. People, and me even being here today is a perfect example of that. I don't know about you, but I have connected with so many more people since the onset of the pandemic in this industry and at large via virtual mechanisms. I think people are far more active than they were. They want a seat at the table. They want their voice to be heard. They want a place, right, in an experience. And they want to sort of have autonomy over how they're engaging in that experience. So I think giving people the opportunity to co-create and co-design will be huge. It also gives them skin in the game, which I definitely think people want.
And what do you mean by that? Like co-create? Like if you were to give an example of something that you foresee being a potential or like a cool thing in the future, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think it's democratizing experiences, right? It's asking people like, what do you want? How would you like to see this play out at your event? I've been doing a lot of that with just meetings. I think we all have been overloaded with meetings and they're all the same, right? They're all through this tiny box. So I've actually been sending my team like, hey, do you guys want to meet or do you want to just make this an email? What makes sense to you? And I have gotten so much incredible feedback just about that tiny experiment with, my small, team of Googlers. So yeah, I think people want to feel like they've been considered and they want to be asked how they want to engage, which brings me to the third C, which is choice. And I think this speaks to, to hybrid, right? Hybrid isn't new. We've been doing it for a really long time, but traditionally hybrid was the extension of an in-person event to a remote audience. And I think that's been inverted, right? Since the 2020 of things, that's been flipped on its head. And now like we need to completely remix hybrid. And how I've been talking about it with my team is think of an old song that's been sampled into like a new EDM remix to make it fresh and relevant for today and have more mass appeal. I think that's what we need to do with hybrid experiences. And we have more at our disposal now than ever to make that happen. So we're really referring to, I'm trying to kill off the word hybrid, which I know is controversial, but I've been referring to it as integrated experiences. So it's not just extending a live event, but it's really creating crossover opportunities and integrating those two things together and integrating your audiences. We've also been referring to it as convergence. I'm throwing everything out and seeing what sticks so we can get rid of hybrid. But I think that takes a really interesting mix of physical spaces, thoughtful physical spaces that are bespoke to use case, good technology solutions, and the right people to support both of those things. So it's a complete reimagining of our resource mix to accomplish that.
So interesting. I mean, just data and knowledge dump that you keep kind of like spitting out here, because I feel like so many of my conversations, like traditionally in the work that we do with IDCOM, it's AV and production and content and video creation. And I was on a call the other day from some connection of a connection, right? Like that's how we're on all of our calls nowadays. And his biggest problem is figuring out and navigating a hybrid space when he traditionally markets at electrical shows and has a big 240 by 100 like exhibit booth spaces, but knowing that there's a hybrid opportunity there. And what if the trade show organizer and trade show company doesn't really want to have a hybrid, but how can he leverage that? And how can he put in a broadcast camera and an LED wall and really cool things and experiences and tether that back to their home studio? I'm like, yes, this has to be something that you take and you leverage and you create for what audiences that you're looking to engage and kind of put the rest of the noise about hybrid and what the expectation is supposed to be out the window.
Yeah. Well, and that speaks to another C, which is collaboration. Like I think we all have specialized skill sets in order to deliver the experiences that we do. But I think it's more important than ever to lean into other skill sets or even across other domains or disciplines. Some of the best advice that I've gotten in thinking through integrated experiences for my team came from a colleague in the gaming community. And that was, if you're building one thing for everyone, it's for no one. You have to segment your audience and you have to be thoughtful about how you do that and design for each segmentation and offer them choices about how they want to engage. And I was like, light bulb. I mean, but those aren't traditionally things that are top of mind in our industry. So I think collaboration is huge. We don't have to have all of the superpowers ourselves. Even the Avengers were a team. So I think talking to people who run established online communities, the gaming community, the civics community, there's so much to think through and figure out in this new world. So, talking to everyone and collaborating as much as we can is crucial.
I mean, yeah, it is. On top of like it being difficult to segment those audiences or groups of people for 65,000 events a year, like that's not easy whatsoever. So you having to get a little bit more granular and not just having a broad approach. I mean, my mind is even turning because you are a technology company and it's Google and you have all the data and information at your disposal. I mean, I know we work in platforms and streaming and all of that stuff on a daily basis, but I can't even start to imagine the types of information and coding and technology you have at your disposal to truly create an environment and an integrated experience for those audiences.
Yeah. Well, we're still trying to connect dots to get people working together toward really robust solutions that meet the breadth of need. People are really surprised when they hear that like Google was not insulated from all of the pain that everyone felt in 2020. We didn't know what to do either. We were sort of like, oh, shoot, just like everyone else, right? We're so lucky to have resources, right? Like to sort of move and act against, but we had a lot to figure out and think through before we could even use those resources. So we definitely weren't insulated from the pain. We were not insulated from the panic. And there's a lot we're still working through.
Yeah. I think we all are. And it's just great to have information like yours and tidbits of information that you can offer around what a big organization like yours is seeing or doing, because I know nor do most event planners have resources to segment their audiences and look at those groups. And so if you were talking to, I guess, the majority of probably who our audience is, smaller event planners and professionals out there, how would you offer resources or pieces of information on how they take this and apply it on their level?
So I think a lot of it is mindset shift, and I think we're overcomplicating some of this. And I'm just now getting to a point where I'm finding my voice around it as well. So like, I'm not an expert. There's still a lot I'm trying to completely wrap my mind around as well. But I think, I mentioned techno-social norms earlier, and it really is just being thoughtful around how we're inviting people to engage with technology or shared physical space, communicating really thoughtfully and explicitly around that, setting appropriate expectations, asking them for their input. They'll tell you what they want. People always do, right? You can ask them before, you can ask them after in a post-event survey. It doesn't do you a whole lot of good at that point unless you're proving ROI. But if you want their help in designing the experience, they'll give it to you. And I'm finding that more than ever. But I think a lot of it is a mindset shift, simplifying it, right? Meeting people where they are is the key to this, and in giving them meaningful opportunities to connect with one another. And we've been doing that in this industry for forever. Like, that's what we're here to do. We're here to bring people together to solve problems and to connect. So I honestly think I would start with simplifying, not overcomplicating, not feeling like you have to have the big budgets or all the bells and whistles, and really thinking about your audience and meeting them where they are and inviting them to engage in the process, because that means a lot right now after we've been out of control of, everything in our lives for the last year.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think too, some of the polls that I put on LinkedIn and just trying to gather data and information, being in the Midwest, right in the middle of the country, I feel like sometimes we can tend to be in a little bubble. And so I love the power of LinkedIn and the network to be able to offer polls and grab insights and to be able to take that data and information. And when you said do a pre-event survey, I mean, hitting the nail on the head right there, where you can, I don't know, a couple months in advance as you're building, when people are like, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what my audience wants. Why not ask them? Why not give a survey? Ask if they want to be in person. Ask if they want to attend a live session or an on-demand session. So many people talk about gamification and networking. What if your audience doesn't even want those things? Why put effort in if they don't want it?
Yeah, they may not want to go to a virtual happy hour. Like, we've all been to a lot of those, right? They may not want a viewing package. They may prefer to donate that money to charity. I think there are a lot of things that we can think through that help people feel seen and considered, and also keep them engaged and brand loyal, that we're just not thinking about right now because we're so worried about the technology or like when we regather, right? I think that there's a lot of things that are simple and really easy to implement right now.
Yeah. Have you seen any really cool things that have come out of kind of this transition, maybe into thinking about that hybrid space, or maybe even previous experiences that you have in building these integrated experiences, as everyone's like, well, engagement isn't just watching something, it's taking action. Any cool thoughts or ideas or trends around that?
So nothing super meaningful to share. Again, I think we've moved out of like, the pivot phase of all of this into the pilot phase. So that's our P word for 2021, which, yay, let's never say pivot again. So, I think we'll have more to share, come half two of 2021. But I think we're really trying to get our resource mix right now and make sure that there are plenty of opportunities for in-person attendees to have crossover with remote audiences and that they're connecting with one another. We're not siloing them from one another. It's not as much about delivering the content in multiple mechanisms, but it's bringing that community together regardless of where they are. So that's what I'm focused on. And I think I'm hoping that we'll be doing a lot more experimentation around over the coming months.
Yeah, interesting. And how do you do that? Is it from your phone? Is it from a laptop or a tablet or tablet kiosks or rooms that you ask people to go engage with other virtual people? Like lots of cool things that could kind of come from that idea around making sure not only the remote audience engages with the content on screen and with that presenter, but that you're asking in return for an in-person audience member to try and reach out and connect and engage with that virtual audience.
Yeah. So you might be joining remotely, but you're not joining alone, right? So I think we're talking about grouping people together in virtual rooms to participate, virtually, but together. And we're talking about making sure we're connecting in-person attendees via networking mechanisms with remote attendees. We've talked about like event influencers, right? Like everyone loves like a highlight reel from an event, maybe we launch some things like that. I think this could look a million different ways, but I think the key to knowing what actually resonates and what matters to your community is trying all of it and measuring as best you can. And that's our goal, is to go into 2022 with some really good data, some thought leadership pieces and some insights that help us design what this looks like moving forward.
Yeah. The last piece that you had kind of given me a list that we wanted to touch on today was this culture of care. And I think it's a great way to kind of just wrap up the idea of data and people and information. And more than anything, what are your thoughts around how you go through 2021 and 22 and all the years for the future with this idea around culture of care?
Yeah. So I think Jumanji, the 2020 of things, really gave me the opportunity to reflect and do a lot of introspection on why I got involved in this industry in the first place, and what about events and bringing people together appealed to me, and what about it I love. And I think it's just that, like, we bring people together, we connect people. There have never been more problems in the world to solve than we have right now. Like there's a lot of work to do. And that work gets done when people come together and there's a brain trust and they're connected in the right ways. And our industry, us as event professionals, are the mechanisms by which that is done optimally and strategically. So what we do is more important than ever. And I think it's important to have human beings and people at the center of the work that we do always. I think there's been a lot of noise around technology and how that's going to impact our industry long term. And like, ultimately, it doesn't matter how we're delivering the experience, as long as we're focused on connecting people, bringing them together and caring for them. So that, that's sort of how I think through culture of care. But I'm excited about where our industry is and where we're headed. Again, I think we're more relevant and we're more important than we've ever been. And I think there's going to be some really cool stuff come out of 2021 based on the ideas I've heard and the collaborations I've seen and all of the testing and piloting and prototyping that's going to happen.
Megan, there's so much information that has come out of this podcast. Can't thank you enough for joining us and offering all of your wisdom. I would love for you to come back in a couple months, end of the year, whatever it may be, and see where all of that research design information has brought, and be able to offer your insights almost yearly on what you're thinking and some really cool studies, and reminding all of the listeners that the reason we do events is to bring people together and keep them at the core of what we're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, I would love to come back. And I encourage anyone who hears this and wants to talk more to reach out. Find me on LinkedIn. I think the more we're partnering and collaborating, the more we expedite our journey to doing really cool stuff and moving away from like all the drama and the fallout from last year. I'm here if anyone wants to chat, and would be happy to come back for sure.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll put her notes and her name for connecting on LinkedIn in the show notes like we always do. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe, follow Meeting Minds. As always, we put little bite-sized pieces of information on our Instagram, Meeting Minds Podcast, and feel free to reach out to any of us if you have more questions about all of the great content we talked about here today. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Meeting Minds.
Thank you for listening to Meeting Minds. Meeting Minds. Brought to you by IDCOM Event Production, changing the world one audience at a time. Follow IDCOM Creative and Meeting Minds Podcast on Instagram. And check out meetingminds.org to find show notes for this episode, past episodes, and inspiration. As always, please subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next week for another episode of Meeting Minds.